But I think the slides cover what we call the Bitcoin future and the micro Bitcoin, which are really, they're two futures products, and the difference is the size. So back in 2017, I believe it was, we launched the first, I think it was the first future on any crypto, that being the larger size BTC, as we have up there, which is a Bitcoin future that's worth 5 Bitcoin. So even back in 2017, I don't remember what the price was at back then. It was something less than 60,000. But even then, that was a big, 5 Bitcoin was a big futures product. It was really more of an institutional size product. Which
5,000 maybe?
Was it 5,000?
Because I was at SIBA when it started. And
okay.
So I remember that. I remember CME started the product, with the futures product. I feel like it was something like that. 4,000.
I can't even venture a guess, Jermal, but but even at 5,000, that's a $25,000 futures contract, which doesn't sound that big except for the volatility that Bitcoin trades at, right? And it's obviously trades an elevated vol versus most of our futures contracts. So, but if you fast forward today, that's a $300,000.
It was 20,000.
20,000. Yeah. So $100,000 even back then. Now we're looking at a $300,000 contract, which is why we launched the micro Bitcoin, right? Which is 1/10 of a Bitcoin. So instead of exposure of 300,000 with one contract, you're getting exposure of about $6,000, which is a lot more manageable, I think, for a lot of individual traders.
Yeah, much easier to digest. I've definitely traded MBT at times.
Yeah, and with BTC. And with any other futures product, any other CME futures product for that matter, if you go on the platform and you just sell an at-the-money put, the max loss, it'll show you the max loss. So if you're not familiar with the actual, or if you forget the actual notional size, just look at what an at-the-money put is on the platform and you'll see the max loss less the credit, and it's exactly 300K. So 6X.
There it is. Yep. Yeah. Right. So, and I think we've seen actually in a lot of our products, it's not just the cryptos, but even if you look at our equity indexes, where the NASDAQ's, I think the mini NASDAQ is trading at $600,000 notional right now. So we've seen more and more individuals really kind of move towards the micro size contracts in a lot of our futures. And certainly that's true of these cryptos.
Yeah, 100%. And we're deeply involved in MNQ and MES. We've got year-long trades there. So
yeah, we do.
Just selling premium on both sides. It's been good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can probably switch to the next slide. So actually, this is what we were just talking about. So, when you look at that big contract, that's $300,000 worth of Bitcoin with one futures contract, which means that if Bitcoin moves by $1,000, it's a $5,000 impact to your P&L. And that's a lot for a lot of individual traders. Yeah. Which is, again, why we're seeing, if it moves 1,000 a day, which it can, I think it is today, that's $100 impact to your P&L, which, again, is just a more manageable size
really is.
For a lot of individuals.
Yeah, and I think with MBT, with BTC, you can trade options there if you want to, but with MBT, I think especially periods like this, if I wanted to just get some static delta here at these really low levels, MBT is one way to achieve that with lower buying power than notional for sure.
But I think that's a great point, Mike, though, in either one of those products is that there are options on both of them. Which, as tasty traders know, right, just opens up a whole world of possibilities in terms of what you might, your view on cryptos, right? It doesn't have to be directional. I think that the fact that there are options on these futures is a characteristic you don't find in a lot of places, in the crypto world.
100%.
Yeah, so this is some of the, how do they work, right? So the underlying is, we call it a reference rate, which you can almost think of it as an index. So we basically take the prices of, I think, 5 to 8 different crypto exchanges and kind of make one price just in case the price were to get out of line on one of them. So they're based on the cash, essentially the cash crypto reference rate. They're cash settled, which means if you're holding a futures that when it expires, you're not going to get physical crypto, right? It's going to we're going to move money one last time, and the position will go away. We talked about the sizes. It says nearly 24/7. We actually are 24/7 now in our cryptocurrency products. So I think we're down for like 2 minutes between 4 and 4:02 every day. But other than that, I think we can. It's fair to say we're 24/7 in those. They expire every month, and then they're quoted in U.S. dollars. Nice. So. Fairly manageable again for individuals.
As long as we're not quoting Bitcoin in yen yet, that's all I care about.
We're not quoting them in yen yet. I think we do. We may have a euro denominated
Really?
Crypto, but most individuals are trading the dollar denominated. Yeah, just some of the differences between the future and then what we might call spot or the cash crypto, and then the ETFs. And I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Futures are regulated. They're essentially 24/7. It's easy to get long or short. I think that's a big deal, right? If you want to short an ETF, for example, you've got to locate it. There could be borrow costs associated with it. With a crypto, if with Bitcoin, you just want to get short, you sell it. You want to get long, you buy it. And it's really that easy. So I think that's a big thing. The leverage, there's inherent leverage in it. Which I think if we, one of the slides that we kind of skipped over, talked about to hold that $6,000 worth of crypto in the micro, it's about a $1,400 performance bond or margin you have to put up. So, less than what you would expect in like the cash stock world where it's 50% according to Reg T. And then the expirations, you obviously have to manage the expirations if you are trading future, which either means, again, let it expire and we'll settle it to cash or roll it into the next month.
I mean, an interesting thing I just thought about too when I put on my kind of dynamic hedging hat, I'm sure there's people out there who will long puts in IBIT probably, right? And say for whatever reason, we do get a big overnight move, say for a reason like, it's down 5,000, maybe 10,000 somehow or another, right? You could either use MBT futures. You just figure out you had to do some math, figure out your notional value, but you could use that to hedge. I mean, I think that's the key thing about using these futures.
100%, because both the futures and the options trade overnight. So you can even manage your deltas with the options if you wanted, but certainly you could with the micros as well.
Love it.
This is, any futures, the P&L line's gonna look like that, right? I think Tasty traders are pretty familiar with the P&L charts, which is gonna look a little bit different if this was an option. But a future's got that straight line P&L. We're just talking about like if, based on some sort of entry criteria you had, maybe you've got a $600 target on the upside and you can place, and I think maybe the most important thing to point out here is how important it is to put stops in your futures orders. Now, of course, that doesn't guarantee that that's what you're going to, lose if it doesn't go your way, but it does sort of give you that added sort of level of protection. It could gap through that, right? And I think it's fair to say that. I think we have to be responsible and say that, but certainly it's important to use the stop order to sort of protect the downside like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a stop person. There's a lot of people who are. I like alerts. Yeah. Because to your point, I like to know if like maybe there's a gap, but it's not a real gap and it fades or, whatever. That's just me. But
that's fair.
For those who are newer, definitely stops is important, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you had the 1,400 on there for the what we call margin in futures, which I kind of think of it as a performance bond because it's not a loan like it is in stocks. So what moves Bitcoin? Maybe I'll turn this one over to you guys.
I was going to say it varies from time to time.
I know.
Yeah, it really does.
I'm turning it over to you because it's a hard one.
It varies from time to time. I would say regulation and policy, personally, I think that might be higher than we're putting on here, honestly, I would say.
It's been interesting, right? Because I think it kind of it's still evolving. It's still a fairly new asset class. For a while, they talked about Bitcoin as the crypto gold, right? And people talked about Bitcoin as a store of value or an inflation hedge, the way that some people look at physical gold. And I think at some points it has had those attributes, but sometimes that's broken down. So I think it's unfair to say that it's arrived as like crypto gold yet at this point. Obviously, Jermal, you said like regulation is going to impact that as well.
Leverage and liquidations is fascinating because that is definitely a thing that happens, but it doesn't happen that often. But I feel like we've seen that.
And that's a dynamic, I think, that comes from the cash market. And, maybe it's worth pointing out, too, that the importance of, when you trade it at CME, you're trading it at a marketplace that's been building fair, transparent, efficient markets for 200 years almost, right? And I think that's important, right? Because when it does move, when it hits the fan, as they say, like you want to make sure those markets are there, that the liquidity's there, and I think CME has established, like I said, almost a 2-century-old tradition of or history of doing that, of providing those markets. So I think it's fair to point that out. And then the last thing I'd say too is like this year, for a while, it seemed like Bitcoin was more correlated with the NASDAQ.
Yeah.
Like you'd see an announcement over the weekend when the stock market was closed. You might look at Bitcoin to see, how might the stock market react to this geopolitical announcement on a Saturday?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
So it's been interesting, right? I think the answer is jury's still out a little bit.
Yeah. I think regulation could spark the next big move to the upside, and then having supply is just going to be a natural supply and demand situation. But right now, people care about these chippies, so it's a great opportunity for Bitcoin long-term holders or big long-term bulls because you have the depressed price point.
Yeah, right now. I mentioned before it's volatile, right? If you look at the vol that Bitcoin trades at, it's historically been among the highest out of all of the products at CME, and I think it remains. It's come down since its early days.
10 years.
Yeah, right. Not that long, right?
Yeah, it hadn't been around long.
But I think it does remain, still among the higher. So I think that's obviously something that you've got to be aware of, which again speaks to that micro size because it is very volatile, and you want to make sure that you've got a manageable position. We talked about round the clock, and it does trade around the clock. It moves around the clock.
I mean, to be fair, when you say other products, I mean, again, it's the bond futures, it's very low vol.
Very low.
It's the grains, very low vol. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely way higher than.
I mean, I think before Bitcoin, nat gas tended to be the most volatile one on the board, and I think for the most part, I think Bitcoin, has a higher vol. Of course, silver had the highest vol for a while this year, so you never know at a certain point in time. But generally speaking, Bitcoin tends to be pretty high.
Well, coincidentally, I've got the futures CME watch list that we have embedded in the platform, and the leaders to the upside in volatility are nat gas and silver right now. And the leader to the downside is Bitcoin. So
Wow.
They're all volatile in their own way.
In their own way, at their own times, right? Exactly. Just we've talked about the rate, what we might call standard size Bitcoin and micro, and I think we've covered that pretty well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I guess just kind of to conclude, it's one benchmark, it's one Bitcoin with two sizes, right? So there are individuals that are trading the 5 Bitcoin future, right? If you've got the risk appetite and the capital, it's there and it's very liquid. But so is, micro Bitcoin is also very liquid, and tends to be where a lot of the individual traders are heading. Again, position size, you guys talk about this all day long, right? The last thing you want to do is get in over your skis on a position that's too big. And I can't even read that, but I can't.
A longer short plan.
Yeah, have a plan, right? Which again speaks exactly what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Have a plan when you do this.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Craig. Appreciate you.
Thank you guys.